and welcome everybody to Law&Crime Daily. I'm Jesse Weber. We want to get right to some new developments. 5 former police officers are facing murder charges out in Tennessee. The district attorney in Memphis says that all 5 played a major role in the death of a man they were arresting. Tadarius Bean, Demetrius Haley, Desmond Mills Jr., Emmett Martin III, and Justin Smith are all accused of multiple felonies. Now, the charges in the grand jury indictment include second-degree murder, aggravated assault, aggravated kidnapping, and official misconduct. Family members of Tyre Nichols watched police video of their son's arrest from earlier this month that landed him in the hospital for days before he died. They say the officers beat Nichols for 3 straight minutes. Now, at the time of the incident, police had only said that there was a confrontation between officers and Nichols when he ran from them during a traffic stop for reckless driving. Authorities plan to release the video to the public on Friday.
We can't imagine the pain you're experiencing, but let me reaffirm, we are here to pursue truth and justice, realizing that we should not be here. Simply put, this shouldn't have happened. I've been policing for more than 30 years. I've devoted my life to this profession, and I'm grieved. Frankly, I'm shocked. I'm sickened by what I saw and what we've learned through our extensive and thorough investigation. I've seen the video, and as DA Morley stated, you will too. In a word, it's absolutely appalling. Let me be clear. What happened here does not at all reflect proper policing. This was wrong. This was criminal.
All right, here with my co-host Brian Buckmeyer, Terry Austin. Brian, I'll start with you. Why second-degree murder and not first? And given that, what kind of prison time could they be facing?
Yeah, so Jesse, the major difference is first-degree murder, premeditated and intentional. Second-degree murder, knowingly. At least that's the way that Tennessee puts it. And I think it's easier to get that knowing charge here in a case like this because at least the facts that we know so far, traffic stop, altercation, run, second altercation. I think that'd be difficult for a prosecutor to prove that this was premeditated. I think it was more of a snapshot type of situation, but knowingly does work because that just means intelligently, consciously, or willfully. And if they are convicted of that second-degree murder, they're looking at anywhere from 15 to 60 years in jail.
Terry, officers have been fired, they've been charged with murder. Do you think the Department of Justice should now get involved?
Well, they just might get involved here. In the past, the DOJ has investigated different cities when they think there might be a pattern and practice of bad police behavior. And we've seen that obviously in Minneapolis for the George Floyd case, where we saw Derek Chauvin get convicted. Right after that, Merrick Garland said, I am going to investigate. And these are constitutional civil rights cases. They're looking at whether or not there are violations to First, Fourth, or even the 14th Amendment. And so they probably will. I mean, we've seen it in Minneapolis, as I said, we've seen it in Louisville, we've seen it in Phoenix. There were 5 people here. How could all 5 of these individuals not know what the policy should be and do this kind of heinous crime without thinking about, what the practice and policies are for their police department? Yeah,
this is going to be a case that we're going to continue to follow as it ultimately progresses. Still ahead on Law&Crime Daily, even more shocking developments in the case of a 6-year-old who shot a teacher inside of a classroom. Teachers say they warned the school's administration that something bad could happen 3 different times. But first, audio from the body cam of the first officer on scene at the Murdoch family estate gives us an idea of the horror show that investigators were walking into. Welcome back, everybody. Law&Crime Daily is bringing you gavel-to-gavel coverage of the Murdoch murder mystery in South Carolina. On Thursday, prosecutor Creighton Waters called up the first witness. Sergeant Daniel Green of the Colleton County Sheriff's Office was the first officer to respond to one of the Murdoch homes on June 7, 2021. Alec Murdoch called 911 after he says he found his wife Maggie and his son Paul on the ground and bleeding near a part of the property used as a dog kennel. Green walked the court through much of the body camera footage. The prosecution highlighted things like tire tracks, bullet casings, and Murdoch's demeanor on that night. But on cross-examination, the defense honed in on the steps law enforcement took to preserve the crime scene, saying that evidence could have been damaged or destroyed. Murdoch openly wept at the defense table during much of the testimony. While Sergeant Green testified that Murdoch was upset on the night of the murders, he didn't appear to shed any tears. Now, while we're allowed to film the defendant, the lawyers, the judge, the witnesses, we are not allowed to film the body camera or the video or the exhibits, which are often very graphic and disturbing.
Somebody go to check them?
Yes, sir. They've already checked them.
They did check them?
Yes, sir.
It's official that they're dead?
Yes, sir. That's what it looks like.
When you observed these victims, was it obvious that they had injuries incompatible with life?
Yes, any reasonable person that came upon those bodies would have come to a conclusion that they were deceased.
All right, we want to give you a quick recap of what the prosecution and the defense had to say during opening statements on Wednesday. Both sides were relatively brief while laying out what we can expect to see and hear over the next few weeks.
Listen to that gathering storm that all came to a head on June 7th, 2021, the day the evidence will show he killed Maggie and Paul. This has been a long, exhaustive investigation. And it's going to be a fairly long trial because it's complicated. It's a journey. There's a lot of aspects to this case. There's a lot of factors to this case. But like a lot of things that are complicated, when you start to put them all together, and piece them together like a puzzle, all of a sudden the picture emerges and it's really simple.
Murdoch's attorney Dick Harpootlian says that the state's case is just smoke and mirrors and says that he wants to ask the judge to allow the jury to travel to the Murdoch property to see the estate for themselves. While the request hasn't come yet, he painted a picture for the jury during his opening.
The night he comes home and finds his wife and son butchered, and when I say butchered, you're going to see these photographs. When I see them now, after having seen them for the last 4 or 5 months, it still shocks me. It still is tough to look at. It still bothers me. And he comes home and finds his son laying in his own blood with his brain laying at his feet, shot to hell. He walks over, he checks to see if there's any life there, although, I mean, he's seeing his brain laying outside his body. He knows there's nothing there. He goes over and tries to get a pulse out of Maggie. No pulse there. Calls 911. I want you to hear that 911 tape. It is a man hysterical, in grief, trying to figure out what's going on.
Brian, why put the first responder on as the initial witness? I mean, what do you think that was so helpful that he provided to the jury?
So, Jesse, I would say it's kind of like a tree, right? This witness gives us the roots of the case. That's the first person at the scene. They're seeing where Murdoch put his shotgun when he drove back, and the tire tracks, and where the blood was, and where the bodies were, and how Murdoch initially reacted. From there, every one of those points, we're going to hear a witness testify about these issues, but it's good for the jury to be grounded in this first responder. So they're almost getting introduced to this case the same way the prosecutor did, and then from there, they'll grow the case, and they'll be able to pick apart the defense's, they'll be able to pick apart what the defense is going to argue, but also the defense gets to pick apart their arguments at each step as this kind of tree branches out.
And let's talk about that, because Terry, the defense conducted a very detailed cross-examination of the sergeant. What points stood out to you that they were trying to make?
Well, Brian's right. I think the defense is trying to pick apart the prosecution's case, and all he has to do is make some reasonable doubt. And he had 2 really good theories, I think. One of the theories is that Paul shot himself and then he shot his mother. And there were brains on the ceiling. And in fact, when the investigators first came there, that's what they thought happened. And Sergeant Green actually said, yep, that's what we thought at first. The second theory that I think is a good theory is the fact that someone related to the boat incident where Mallory Beach died might have had some vengeance and wanted to come back and to kill Paul. And he established that during that cross-examination because that was the first thing that Alec said to him when he got on the scene.
All right, so we're starting from the beginning and it'll slowly make its way through. I encourage everyone out there to stay with us for gavel-to-gavel coverage of this high-profile trial. You can check out links to videos, live streams from the courtroom, all on lawandcrime.com. And coming up on Law and Crime Daily, a Holocaust survivor meets a woman online and ends up falling victim to a disturbing crime. Plus, teachers say school administrators had at least 3 warnings that a young student might harm others before he shot his teacher in the chest. Those details up next. The educator shot by a 6-year-old student in her first grade classroom says all of this could have been prevented because teachers warned school officials that that little boy had a weapon. Her attorney had this message.
See, Abby and these other teachers at Rich Neck Elementary School tried to do the right thing on January 6th, the day of the shooting. On that day, over the course of a few hours, 3 different times, 3 times, school administration was warned by concerned teachers and employees that the boy had a gun on him at the school and was threatening people. But the administration could not be bothered. This tragedy was entirely preventable if the school administrators responsible for school safety had done their part and taken action when they had knowledge of imminent danger. But instead, they failed to act and Abby was shot.
When that 6-year-old boy shot Abigail Zwerner, the bullet went through her hand and into her chest. Now, luckily, she's out of the hospital, but she does have a very long road to recovery. Her attorney says that the administration downplayed the threat from the student at least 3 different times. In fact, at one point, a school official told a teacher that he likely didn't take a gun out to recess because his pockets are too small to put it in. The boy's parents say he has an acute disability and that the gun was secured with a trigger lock. On Wednesday, the school board voted to fire School District Superintendent George Parker III. Brian, 3 times the school was supposedly warned, and 3 times they apparently did nothing. Seems like a pretty open and shut case after that, no?
It does, but what I need to hear is what exactly was relayed to these teachers or administrators and what steps did they take. We also need to look at the school's protocols for how they're supposed to address this. I can figure that there's going to be protocols at a high school or a college. I understand this is a middle school. Maybe they don't have those in place. Maybe they're not thinking about 6-year-olds having a gun. Maybe they just thought, hey, this is a joke. This is a hyperbole. This can't be true, because we're all sitting here thinking, this can't be true. How do we have a 6-year-old shooting a teacher? But we see the injuries, we see the wounds, we know what happened, and now we have to ask the hard questions. What policies were in place, and why were they overlooked?
Terry, a couple of those administrators, they've left, they've been ousted of the positions. I'm curious why they're leaving, because are they trying to protect themselves from being included in a civil lawsuit?
Well, they can try, but it's not going to help. As you said, we know that the superintendent was voted out. He was ousted, he was kicked out. There was also an assistant principal who actually just left. She decided, I'm leaving. And if she did it because she thought she could protect herself from any sort of civil liability, it's not going to work. First of all, if she was one of the people who ignored those warnings, then she could be held negligent for those actions. It wasn't reasonable under those circumstances for her to ignore the warnings if she was involved. The other issue, as far as the school is concerned, is the fact that were these teachers trained? Brian mentioned it. What are the protocols? I believe they should have had protocols in place, even though it is an elementary school. The fact that you could have someone bring a gun in, whether it's a student, an administrator, a parent, a stranger, you need to be ready for anything that happens, especially with all of the shootings across the country.
Yeah, it makes absolutely no sense. And from what we're hearing, just taking this as true, maybe could have been prevented. Police say a man plowed his pickup truck through the front doors of their police department Wednesday on purpose. You have to take a look at this video. The crash happened around lunchtime in Grand Junction, Colorado, and you can see the truck hits the retaining wall on the other side of the lobby. Now, at the time, 11 employees were behind that wall. An officer ordered the driver out at gunpoint, and he was taken into custody without any injuries. The driver, Nathan Chacon, told police that he thought he was being followed and thought that his best bet for protection was to drive into the police department. Unbelievable there. Well, we have new updates from Fayetteville, Arkansas, where the CFO of Tyson Foods drunkenly broke into a woman's home and slept in her bed.
All right. Put your hands behind your back. No. Hands behind your back. Mayville Police Department. This isn't your house. Hey, hands behind your back. You're under arrest.
Yeah, that's not great. John R. Tyson pleaded guilty this week to public intoxication and criminal trespassing charges. Back in November, a woman found the 32-year-old executive asleep in her bed around 2 a.m. She called police to report an intruder, thinking that her front door might have been left unlocked while she was out. Officer said Tyson was mostly unresponsive at the scene and smelled very strongly of alcohol. After his arrest, Tyson told investigators, quote, "I'm embarrassed. This was an incident inconsistent with our company values as well as my personal values." He's required to pay a total of $440 in fines and fees. I'm sure he can afford it. Well, we have a police officer under investigation in Wyandotte, Michigan, after the department says there's been an incident of stealing at the station. Earlier this month, a police officer was eating lunch in the break room when he was asked to help his colleague with someone in jail. Now, his half-eaten sandwich was left on the table. When the officer came back to the break room, another colleague walked out licking his lips, licking his chops. Uh-oh. And the sandwich had mysteriously vanished. After reviewing the evidence, they charged K-9 Officer Ice, a known repeat offender, with the crime. The department says that he's invoked his Fifth Amendment right to remain silent. Completely understand that. But some fans on Facebook sent Officer Ice his very own sandwich. When we come back, a much darker story. A Holocaust survivor loses his life savings at the hands of a scammer. We'll look at the lies that made one woman a millionaire. Back, everybody. We end today's show with a disturbing story out of Florida. A Holocaust survivor was swindled out of nearly $3 million during a years-long romance scam. The 87-year-old Manhattan man met Peaches Sturgo on a dating site 6 years ago. The 36-year-old, who also goes by the name Alice, asked the victim for money starting in 2017. She claimed that she won a lawsuit settlement, but just, needed help covering legal fees. The series of lies would continue for more than 4 years. Sturgo purchased 2 properties, multiple cars, a boat, expensive watches, all with the money. Sturgo even sent the victim fake bank invoices to make it look like she was paying him back. A total of 62 checks were deposited in Sturgo's account until 2021, when the victim told his son that he gave his life savings to Sturgo, who promised that she would pay him back. Sturgo was arrested Wednesday on a federal charge of wire fraud. Terry, what a terrible case. I mean, romance scams, they're on the rise. You researched the FTC website. What advice do they provide to avoid being scammed?
Well, it's increasing so much that they did provide advice on their website. It's over $200 million lost last year. They say what you should do is look out for certain types of profiles. So if you see someone who says they are an international figure, that they have to travel a lot, or if you have a picture, one of the things you can do is a reverse image on that picture. And if in fact another name comes up, you know that that is not the right person. And they're saying that what they want to ask for is cash. They don't just say, write me a check, or other ways that money can be traced. They try to get money in ways that cannot be traced. So they ask for gift cards or wired through something like some federal wiring, company. But, what they say you need to do is to be very careful. Older people are often targeted on these sites. And if you have a family member who is older, make sure you take care of those individuals and have them double check before they actually go onto these sites.
Brian, the great thing is we present always both sides in this case, in our stories. The victim wrote the checks for Sturgo. Can't the defense say that these were gifts to his girlfriend?
Not really, because Jesse, it comes down to coercion as well as false promises. That's where it becomes wrong, but that's not really what she's being charged with. It's the wire fraud. It's the moving of the funds across state lines through false information. Now, this story, like Terry said, it's dangerous. Many people should be on the lookout. It makes me very happy that I am happily married and not dating anymore. But watch out for people like this, because they can coerce you into spending your life saving away, and you better hope that the police can catch them.
Unbelievable. You don't think that a Holocaust survivor has had a hard enough life now has to deal with this? Brian, Terry, thanks so much. Everyone, thanks for joining us here on Law&Crime Daily. We'll see you next time as we discuss justice in America.